Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that I think a lot of people find a little confusing: multi-level marketing, MLMs, and how to tell them apart from pyramid schemes.
Yeah, those terms do get thrown around a lot.
Right. So we've got a source here that really tries to break it all down clearly, and I think by the end of this, you'll be able to spot the warning signs yourself.
Definitely important to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you don't get caught up in something that, sounds like a great opportunity.
Exactly.
But really isn't.
Yeah, and one of the first things our source points out is the entry fee.
Okay.
So with a legitimate MLM, it's usually pretty reasonable.
Mhm.
Think like the cost of a starter kit with actual products you can use and sell.
Yeah.
But what happens when those entry fees start to climb? How do we know if it's just a pricey startup or a red flag for a pyramid scheme?
That's a great question, and I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because even some legitimate starter kits can be expensive. I think the key difference is what that money is actually going towards.
Okay.
So in an MLM, the focus is on selling those products to customers.
Right.
But with a pyramid scheme, the emphasis shifts to recruitment.
Okay.
So that hefty upfront cost you're paying, that's all about securing your spot in the scheme. It's not about providing you with tools to actually build a sustainable business.
So it's like you're paying for the potential to make money, but not necessarily the means to actually do it.
Exactly. And that's where the analogy of buying a ticket to a concert for a band that doesn't exist comes in.
Oh, yeah, our source mentions that.
Right.
Okay, so you're paying for this promise, but there's no substance to back it up. Okay, so let's say the entry fee seems reasonable and you're actually getting something tangible.
Go ahead.
The next thing to consider is the product or service itself.
Absolutely. A legitimate MLM should have genuine products or services, things that people actually want and need.
Right.
They should be of decent quality and ideally have some kind of a satisfaction guarantee.
But with a pyramid scheme, what are you really selling? Hopes and dreams.
Sadly, sometimes it's not even that concrete.
Really?
They might be pushing products that are vastly overpriced or of dubious quality.
Yeah.
Or even worse, something that doesn't even exist.
Wait, seriously, like they're selling you a product that it's completely made up.
Yeah, it happens more often than you think.
Wow.
Our source uses the image of a blue unicorn to represent this.
Okay.
It's a fantasy, something alluring but ultimately non-existent.
So if you're being pitched a blue unicorn, run the other way.
Exactly. Always ask yourself, is there a genuine market demand for this product or service? Would you buy it if you weren't involved in this business opportunity?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of the business opportunity, let's talk long-term vision. Is this a sprint or a marathon? Our source talks about the difference between planting a tree and chasing a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy, I think.
Yeah.
A legitimate MLM is about building something sustainable.
Right.
It takes time and effort to cultivate a customer base, generate repeat business, and create that residual income everyone's always talking about. You're essentially nurturing a tree that will hopefully bear fruit down the line.
Whereas a pyramid scheme is more like trying to win the lottery.
More like trying to win the lottery with a ticket that's already expired.
Ouch. Okay, so how do earnings actually work in an MLM?
Okay.
Is it all about how much you sell, or is there more to it?
In a legitimate MLM, your earnings should be directly tied to your sales volume.
Okay.
You're essentially an independent contractor building your own business. The more you sell, the more you earn.
But I've heard some MLMs put a big emphasis on recruiting people.
Yeah.
How does that fit into the picture?
That's where things can get a little murky.
Yeah.
Some MLMs have compensation plans that reward you for bringing in new recruits. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, as long as the focus remains on selling actual products or services.
So if you're making more money from recruiting than from selling, that's a problem.
It could be a sign that the business model is leaning more towards a pyramid structure.
Okay, so that's something to keep an eye on. What about the types of compensation plans out there?
Yeah.
Are there any specific ones we should be aware of?
Yeah, there are quite a few different compensation plans in the MLM world, each with its own nuances.
Okay.
For example, there's the unilevel plan, the binary plan, the matrix plan, just to name a few. Some of these plans can be structured in ways that prioritize recruitment over sales.
Right, and that, as we've discussed, can be a red flag.
Exactly.
So it's not just about the type of plan, but also about how it's implemented and whether it incentivizes sustainable business practices.
Exactly. Always take the time to really understand the compensation plan thoroughly.
Okay.
How are commissions calculated? Are there caps or limits on earnings? What are the requirements for advancement?
And how does all of this tie into the company's overall financial stability? How can we assess if an MLM is built on solid ground or if it's just a house of cards waiting to collapse?
That's a critical question
Yeah.
because you don't want to invest your time and energy
Right,
into something that's not going to be around for the long haul.
right.
One way to assess a company's financial health is to look at its track record.
Okay.
How long has it been in business? Has it shown consistent growth?
Are there any independent audits or financial statements available that can give us a clearer picture of their financial stability?
Those are all excellent questions to ask. It's also important to look beyond the glossy brochures and marketing materials
Right.
and do some independent research.
What kind of information should we be looking for?
Look for reviews from actual customers, not just testimonials from people within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Are people genuinely happy with the products? Are they seeing real results? You can also check out the company's rating with the Better Business Bureau to see if there have been any complaints or legal issues.
And what about industry associations or regulatory bodies?
Yeah.
Are there any organizations that oversee the direct selling industry and help ensure ethical practices?
Absolutely. In the U.S., for example, there's the Direct Selling Association, the DSA,
Okay.
which has a code of ethics that member companies are expected to adhere to.
Okay.
You can check if the company you're considering is a DSA member
Mm-hmm.
and if they've had any issues with compliance.
So there are resources available to help us do our due diligence. We don't have to just take their word for it.
Exactly. You have the power to investigate, ask tough questions,
Yeah.
and make informed decisions.
Right.
Remember, your financial well-being is at stake.
That's a great reminder. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Mhm.
We've talked about entry fees, products, long-term vision, earnings, compensation plans, and even the company's financial stability. We've also emphasized the importance of doing your research and being aware of the red flags that could indicate a pyramid scheme in disguise.
Absolutely. It's all about empowering yourself to make the best choices for your individual circumstances.
Exactly. And up next, we'll continue our deep dive into the world of MLMs, exploring those subtle nuances that can make all the difference. We'll talk about those all-important red flags in more detail, share some practical tips for evaluating a business opportunity, and discuss how to navigate the often tricky social dynamics that come into play when friends or family are involved. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been digging into the complexities of multi-level marketing and how to tell the legitimate opportunities from those that might not be so above board.
Yeah, it's a tricky world out there.
It is. We've talked about entry fees, products, long-term vision, earnings, compensation plans, and even how to gauge a company's financial stability.
A lot to consider.
It is a lot to consider.
Ah.
But as we all know, the devil is often in the details. What are some of those subtle red flags that might not be immediately obvious, but could signal that something isn't quite right? Yeah, it's like you said, the big flashy warnings are easy to spot, but sometimes it's those subtler cues that can really trip you up.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to pay close attention to is the overall messaging and culture of the MLM.
Okay.
Do you notice a heavy emphasis on recruitment rather than on providing value to customers?
Like, are they constantly talking about building a downline and reaching those higher ranks instead of focusing on the actual products or services being offered?
Exactly. And often that kind of messaging comes hand in hand with unrealistic promises of wealth and success.
Right, right.
If you hear a lot of talk about getting rich quick, earning a six-figure income in just a few months, achieving financial freedom without putting in the work, that's a huge red flag.
It's like they're selling you a lifestyle, not a business opportunity.
That's a great way to put it. And often that sales pitch is wrapped in, a lot of motivational jargon and feel-good rhetoric that can be quite seductive.
Right.
Especially if you're feeling vulnerable or you're looking for a quick fix to your financial problems.
So it's important to separate the emotional appeal from the practical realities of running a business.
Absolutely. Remember, building a successful business, regardless of the model, takes time, effort, and a genuine understanding of the market.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the market, let's talk about market saturation. I've heard that this can be a big issue with MLMs. What exactly is market saturation, and how can we determine if a particular market is already oversaturated?
So market saturation occurs when there are more sellers than buyers in a given market.
Okay.
It's essentially a situation where supply outweighs demand.
Right.
In the context of MLMs, this can be problematic because if everyone in your network is selling the same products or services, it becomes increasingly difficult to find new customers.
So you're essentially competing with your own team.
In a way, yes. And that competition can be fierce, especially in markets that are already saturated. Before joining an MLM, it's crucial to assess the market for the specific products or services being offered. Are there already a lot of people selling similar products in your area?
Yeah.
Is the target market large enough to support additional sellers?
Are there any tools or resources available to help us analyze market demand and assess the potential for saturation?
There are definitely some things you can do. You can start by conducting some basic market research online. Look at competitor websites, read industry reports, see what kind of search volume there is for the products or services you're considering selling. You can also talk to people in your target market and gauge their interest level.
And what about the company itself? What are some red flags that might indicate that the company is not operating ethically or sustainably?
One red flag to watch out for is a lack of transparency.
Okay.
If a company is reluctant to share information about its financial performance, its compensation plan, its overall business model, that's a cause for concern.
Transparency is key in any business relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You should also be wary of companies that make exaggerated claims about their products or services, or that use high-pressure sales tactics to recruit new members.
What about those stories we sometimes hear about MLMs exploiting their members or engaging in questionable business practices? Are those just isolated incidents, or are there systemic issues within the industry that we need to be aware of?
Unfortunately, there have been cases where MLMs have crossed the line into unethical or even illegal territory.
Right.
Some companies have been accused of operating as pyramid schemes, focusing more on recruitment than on selling products, and making misleading promises about earning potential.
And sometimes it's not even the company itself, but rather individual distributors who engage in unethical behavior, like making false claims about products or pressuring friends and family to join their network.
That's right. It's important to remember that even within legitimate MLMs, there could be bad actors who exploit the system for their own gain. That's why it's so crucial to do your due diligence.
Right.
Research the company and its track record, and be wary of anyone who seems more interested in recruiting than in selling actual products.
We've talked a lot about the potential downsides and red flags. But what about the other side of the coin? There must be some legitimate aspects of MLMs, right? What are some of the potential benefits or advantages that might draw people to this type of business opportunity?
There are definitely some potential upsides to MLMs. For some people, the flexible work schedule and the ability to be their own boss can be very appealing. They might also enjoy the social aspect of building a network and connecting with like-minded individuals.
It can also be an attractive option for people who are looking for a side hustle or a way to supplement their income.
That's true. And for those who are passionate about the products or services they're selling, it can be a rewarding experience to share that passion with others and help them achieve their goals.
But even with those potential benefits, it's important to weigh them against the risks and to approach any MLM opportunity with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember that success in an MLM is not guaranteed. It takes hard work, dedication, and a solid understanding of the business model. And even then, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to build a sustainable income.
So it's about setting realistic expectations and not getting caught up in the hype.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that MLM is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a business.
Right.
And like any business, it requires a strategic approach, a solid work ethic, and a willingness to learn and adapt.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from those subtle red flags to the potential benefits and drawbacks of MLMs.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We've been really kind of spelunking in this world of multi-level marketing.
Yeah, we've been deep in the trenches here.
Sifting through the hype and the realities, the red flags and the potential benefits.
It's complicated.
It is. And I think one of the most important takeaways here is knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to making informed financial decisions.
Couldn't agree more.
We've talked about so many factors to consider.
The products, the compensation plan, the company's track record. But sometimes I think the most challenging aspect of navigating the MLM world is the social dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, because often it's not some random salesperson pitching you on an opportunity. It's a friend, a family member, someone you genuinely care about.
Yeah.
And that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
It does. You want to be supportive. You don't want to hurt their feelings, but you also need to protect your own financial well-being.
Exactly.
So how do you strike that balance?
It's a tough one. Our source actually touches on this,
Yeah.
emphasizing the importance of clear communication and setting boundaries.
Yeah, being upfront and honest from the start.
Right.
It's okay to say no, or at least not right now. You don't have to jump into something just because someone you know is excited about it.
It's about prioritizing your own financial goals
Exactly.
and making decisions that align with your values.
And that might mean having some difficult conversations. But it's important to remember that a true friend will respect your decision, even if it's not the one they were hoping for.
And if that friendship hinges on you joining their business venture, well, that might be a red flag in itself, wouldn't you say?
I think that's a very astute observation. A genuine business opportunity should stand on its own merits. It shouldn't require pressure or guilt tactics to entice people to join.
So how can we navigate these conversations in a way that's both honest and respectful? Any tips for kind of gracefully declining an MLM opportunity without, damaging those personal relationships?
One approach is to, express appreciation for their enthusiasm, acknowledge their hard work, but then gently explain that this particular opportunity isn't a good fit for you right now.
You could even frame it as a timing issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the right time for me to take on a new venture, but I'll definitely keep you in mind if things change.
Exactly. And if they press for details, you can always keep it general.
Yep.
My financial goals are a little different right now, or I'm focusing on other priorities at the moment.
And if they keep pushing, it's okay to be more assertive and set those boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate you sharing this with me, but I've made my decision and I'm not going to change my mind.
It's also important to remember that you don't owe anyone an explanation or justification for your decision. Your finances are personal, and you have the right to make choices that align with your own circumstances and goals.
And if those choices involve politely declining an MLM opportunity, that's perfectly valid.
Absolutely. Now, stepping back from the interpersonal dynamics for a moment, I think it's worth reiterating that even within the world of legitimate MLMs, there's a spectrum of ethical practices and business models.
That's a great point. Just because an MLM is technically legal, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good fit for everyone or even that it operates with the highest ethical standards.
Exactly. Some companies might prioritize short-term profits over long-term sustainability. Or they might have compensation plans that incentivize recruitment over sales.
Right.
Even if they're not technically operating as a pyramid scheme.
So even if you've determined that an MLM is legitimate, it's still crucial to evaluate the specific company and opportunity carefully.
Absolutely. Look at the leadership, the company culture, the values they promote. Are they focused on empowering their members to build sustainable businesses? Or are they more interested in pushing products and recruiting new distributors?
It's about aligning yourself with a company that shares your values.
Yeah.
And that operates in a way that you feel comfortable with.
Well said.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to join an MLM is a personal one. But by being informed, asking tough questions, and trusting your instincts, you can make a choice that empowers you and sets you up for success, whatever path you choose.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into this fascinating and sometimes confusing world of multi-level marketing.
It was a journey.
We hope this has been helpful, informative, and maybe even a little empowering.
Definitely. Remember, knowledge is your best defense against shady business practices, so stay curious, stay informed, and always keep diving deep.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.